Everyone, we're going to get started. I want to welcome everyone to today's fireside chat, the next one in our series of webinars. We are very happy to continue bringing different information to all of you to help through these challenging times that everyone is experiencing. I'm Frank Niesenbaum, VP of Sales for E2B and C2B Tech, and I'll be your host today. Actually, general conversation with I am joined by Mary Jo Mahood, our practice manager. Hi, Mary Jo.
Hi, Frank.
MJ will be helping us understand the world of big data and discussing the impact that data can have on everybody's businesses, both during and post-pandemic. Obviously, there's going to be a post-pandemic soon, we hope. Our goal is to provide as much information as we can to help you all navigate through these tough times, as well as come out on the other side even stronger than ever. As usual, we hope you enjoy the warmth of our fireplace. The fireplace is behind us. We're hoping that soon we won't need them, and we'll turn them to beach scenes so that we can, because it'll be warmer. But with a bit of hope that we now have, we think we're even more confident that everything we're doing and nationally and in our community spirit and cooperation will get us through this and back on a vibrant path. So again, welcome, Mary Jo. And today we're going to discuss various aspects of data and how it can affect and change your business. So as we get started, which we typically do, we'd like to put a couple of poll questions out for you. The first one is to get an understanding of possibly give us some information on how your operations may have changed during this pandemic. Has your operation changed? The answers, yes, you're closed and no one is working. Yes, both with in-office and remote workers. Yes, you're open with remote workforce only. Actually, that would be first question. Actually, we're changing. I'm sorry, we have a different question on the screen. We'd like to actually understand what you're doing for data. You have a formal way you're using data in your business. Yes, you use your ERP. Yes, you're using spreadsheets. Yes, with industry standard data management tools, or no, everything's manual. Just give us we'll give you a couple of seconds here to answer the questions for us. Okay. Looks like a good mix. Okay, that helps. Alrighty then. Okay, we're going to jump right into it now. So Mary Jo, when we think about what everybody's doing, what everybody's going through, kind of looking at what's on everybody's mind, what are your thoughts about what maybe the CEOs out there in the world and other C-level people are most worried about during this crisis? What do you see?
Sure, that's a really great question. We actually posed that question to a number of our clients, and their top concern was about the ability to quickly gather reliable information. The COVID-19 pandemic, where we find ourselves today, has only really heightened that anxiety for many of our business leaders. But nonetheless, a lot of these forward-thinking companies that we work with, they are tapping into innovative technology and relatable data to maintain the business continuity, not just for their employees, but also their customers as well, as we go through this big global upheaval that we find ourselves in. And what we're finding is that everybody is stretched so thin that during the effect that's happening on our economy, many of our clients and our business leaders are turning towards data now more than ever to answer customer needs and to help them create a brand of operational efficiency that we believe is probably going to last well beyond where we're at in this middle of this pandemic and outside of the recovery that's soon to come from the COVID-19. So, Frank, I'm wondering, as we're talking about this, and the times they're very challenging for everyone, how are you defining data?
That's a great question, which is what we're trying to talk about today. And it's interesting, you and I have been doing this a long time, and data can be many things. And you look at an average business, for example, it's financial information, like their basic books of record. Everyone keeps them, financial statements, that type of thing that everyone has. You can look at, if you're a manufacturer, you've got manufacturing data, or, in distribution, there's data around your channel, but also marketing and sales data. So I see there's a lot of data out there, and it can be used in a lot of ways. One of the things we see in the environments that we're working with, a lot of talk about KPIs, right? So I know what they are, but I'd like to maybe get your take on what you think the different KPIs are to talk about, and what that means in general. There's a lot there.
Sure. Absolutely, and just for anybody who might be joining us that don't know that acronym, that really stands for the Key Performance Indicators, and those are needed, and they're very essential for all organizations. They are what helps drive the operational improvements, and they help present performance information for all levels of your organization. The key, though, to success is selecting KPIs that are going to deliver long-term value to your organization. So conversely, if you pick ones that are misconstrued, or even overlooked, those KPIs can actually cause your organization to basically crash and burn. That phenomenon has been deemed segregation. And an example of that is where you're maximizing profit margin, where that can actually hurt the quality of goods and services, or maximizing the lifetime value can negatively impact your customer experience. And that's done by, say, encouraging the use of some not so good cross-selling or upselling techniques that are very harmful to the long-term growth of your customers. As there was a case most recently in the last financial crisis where a very well-known financial institution had participated in these types of negative cross-selling and upselling techniques. So if you take your KPIs too far, the wrongly selected ones can cause you to suffer profoundly. Another example is if you take a look at some of the challenges that Uber has had with their quality control over their driver recruitment, that led to a number of controversies around the customer experience.
Yeah, it could have an effect across the organization. That's great conversation about where KPIs can drive good and bad behavior, right? We want to make sure we focus on the right stuff.
Absolutely.
So that's a good thing. So obviously KPIs abound. We've talked about them a little bit. We're going to talk about them some more. So in terms of the pandemic and what everybody's going through right now, are the KPIs different now that we should be looking at or talking about?
I wouldn't say that they're so much different as much as I would say you're looking to place a stronger emphasis on certain KPIs. So, for example, for our manufacturers or even our distributors, they want to become laser focused on the status of their facilities, which could include their manufacturing plants, even their supplier factories that they work with, their distribution centers, and some may even have some retail outlets. And as the global economy endures this major slowdown that we're seeing, our business leaders have to also want to monitor things about the state and the status of their raw materials, their WIP, goods that are in transit and available inventory in much greater frequency. And another great KPI that probably goes across all organizations, not just manufacturers and distributors, would be taking a look at your receivables. If you recall back in the last recession that we went through, the average length of receivables stretched out to 22 extra days. So you want to know that ahead of time and be able to plan around those dips that are going to come in your cash flow.
Yeah, makes total sense.
So, Frank, are there any other areas that you have thought about in terms of where KPIs might might play a role and maybe are different than what I just mentioned?
Yeah, I think, being from the sales side, sales to marketing side of an organization, I think that, marketing is a huge topic, talking about, how to measure marketing activities, marketing programs, things like that. And I say there is a different way to talk about it when you talk about marketing. That's something that's there.
So why do you feel that marketing is different during this time? What is so special about marketing KPIs in the middle of a pandemic?
Yeah, well, it's kind of crazy, I think. We've talked a lot in these webinars we've been holding, and obviously a lot of it's because of the pandemic. So obviously there's a big thing there. What's changed? Obviously everyone's changed, at least from the standpoint, there's a lot of changes in everyone's personal life, their professional lives, everywhere around the globe. Marketing teams are working from home. Maybe they're remote, just like other employees, juggling family commitments or homeschooling. There's always something else going on. So, while they're dealing with the fact that the entire campaigns have been suspended or drastically altered in many cases.
Well, then should we even be bothering to measure our marketing efforts while we're dealing with this?
Yeah, the answer quickly is yes, right? So we always want to be measuring because there's a cost benefit to the things we do. But I think there's some things that, you can consider putting some light brake touches on. One is that I suggest that, maybe you stop any of the short-term campaign KPIs. You're going to be making some tough calls about your long-term business objectives, of course, because you have to think ahead as well. But if those objectives are still relevant, you might be tempted to change some of your long-term key performance indicators or KPIs to only look at short-term, right? Because there's a pandemic and we're focused on today. My only caution there is to tend to resist that urge. Because these circumstances, what we're going through right now is very unique. You might not hit any of the short-term KPIs. It's more likely that you can learn from that, the success or failure of short-term KPIs, but what you learn there might not be usable because this is not the norm, right? We're not in a normal time. Everything's a little different, and it's hard to react to what people might be thinking short-term. I think that, when you look at marketing and sales in general, I think one of the things that this is a good time to do is to think, right? Take advantage of some think times. I know we're doing it, right? We're looking at our policies and our procedures and all of our processes and listening to our vendors on things that might be working in these tough times. So we don't always have that time. We don't have the luxury of any spare time. Not that we're not busy, but maybe there's a little more time to think. And I guess the area to focus on for me is planning. Right, so maybe this is a good time to think about your analytics strategy for 2021 and beyond. None of us really knows what this is going to look like post COVID-19, but we do know that we can try to figure out what our best practices are, like I talked about, guidelines, guardrails for measurement, and what that should look like for the future. One major suggestion I know, and we've been doing it as well, is invest in upgrades, structural upgrades. Maybe in the past, a few years or so, you were working at such a fast pace and had so much going on that you put off some of the upgrades, the marketing and tracking tools that you're using, or how effective they are, what we can do. If you're seeing a reduction in your large scale campaign measurement efforts, now might be the time to put in place some structural upgrades, change your tools, different policies around how you're going to track and the analytics that go with it. There's a lot of great tools out there, and I think this is as good of a time as any to do that. So, that was a great question. I think there's a lot. Marketing and sales are always unique. It's a little different than the rest of the organization, but that was a great way to look at it. I think, MJ, one of the things that comes up in my mind, and I know is on the minds of everybody, excuse me, especially in these times when we're global and we're already working towards a global economy and a lot of e-commerce things going on. What are your thoughts about security in terms of this data? I know that people think, whoa, wait a minute, where's my data and is it secure? What do you think about there?
Sure, I believe it shouldn't even just be in times of pandemics, but you should always be concerned about the security of your data. And we need to, even right now, more so than ever, because of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic and all the related government guidance that we're receiving, you know, the required social distancing and the individuals having to work from home when possible, that's resulted in a lot of organizations having to rapidly adapt the way in which they operate. So despite those unprecedented challenges that we need to face in the coming weeks and the ones that we've already been facing, you're also having to deal with, in many cases, significantly reduced resources. That could be in both terms of staff or funds. So it's important that organizations do what they can to try and maintain data security protections while taking the actions necessary to deal with this crisis and following those governmental guidelines. Because this could include having the need to maybe send out unusual and sometimes very urgent communications to individuals, which can unfortunately increase the risk of breaching any type of data protection laws. I don't know if you read, but there was a recent breach over in the UK with a community housing organization over there, where all they were doing last month was trying to send out an email communication to their clients and to their residents. And what they went through actually provides us with a really good timely reminder of what can go wrong when you are dealing with some rapidly changing environments and you're dealing with people's fears as they try to work. And what actually happened is, for those who did not read up about the Watford case over there in the UK, is all they did was send an email out to their tenants, providing some advice on how the tenants can communicate with them during this pandemic and how they were going to receive information about how this housing community was, what they were doing to protect their residents and themselves during the pandemic. But unfortunately, the email inadvertently attached a spreadsheet that contained the personal data of, I think it was about 3,500 of their residents. And that particular spreadsheet contains some personal data that over in the UK was categorized as special category data, and that happens to be subjected to additional protection laws due to the sensitivity. So you can just imagine what they're doing over there right now.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, you and I have both seen, maybe some emails coming from someone where the wrong spreadsheet was attached, or there was more data attached than maybe we were supposed to get or see. And I know that, I find myself, if I'm sending an email or do something, I'm checking it twice, right? It's funny with email, you can type ahead or you type the name in and it comes up in an email. It might not be the person you were sending it to. And I think your advice is great. I mean, take some time to look at the things you're sending, and number one, make sure it's going to the right people with the right information attached. But then secondly, that you're not doing something that might be, against the wrong law or the wrong requirement or what's out there. That's great advice, and a sad story for them over there. So when we talk about the pandemic again and talking about data, what lessons, what thoughts do you have around things we can learn or that it's taught us about data and how to deal with it?
Sure. There's a lot of lessons that we can learn from this. If we talk about what lessons should we make sure that our employees are learning, well, let's remind them to be extra vigilant about the phishing emails. Cyber criminals absolutely love a crisis because they are preying on our fears and our ability to not be thinking maybe straight all the time when you're going through a crisis like this. So everyone needs to be on the lookout for emails designed to either entice them to click on the latest and greatest offer related to some type of protection against the virus, all these options that might be available, or even from an employee perspective, they might be receiving some emails that are disguised as urgent instructions coming from their boss or a colleague who just happens to not be in the office. So you want to make sure to talk to your employees about that, and even just talk to your loved ones and your family and remind them of these things. And something you can do to help with that is to make sure that you enable the multi-factor authentication on whatever accounts that you are in control of. Having these appropriate procedures and having them in place for the communications that you are sending out to a number of recipients is also something else that you want to make sure, just like the case we talked about, that you make sure that the personal or proprietary data relating to any of the other recipients is not inadvertently disclosed. I mean, that's another big thing that the pandemic has taught us. That would include also taking measures to ensure if you're blind copying recipients so that you're not sharing even email addresses for people. Yeah. So that's what they should be reminding some of their employees.
Yeah, that's great advice. So I always say, Amazon doesn't ask you for your credit card stuff in an email. The IRS never sends you emails asking for information, and you didn't win the lottery in some sub-African continent when they send you the email telling you did. That's the key. And I think those of us in the business, we get it, right? We're constantly paying attention to this stuff because we're in technology, but the average person might not be. And it reminds me, and I know you know this situation very, very well, but we had a client, I think, that got stuck with some ransomware or something, didn't they?
I did, yeah, absolutely. It was just within the last couple of months that someone had inadvertently initiated this ransom virus rampant on their server, and it hopped from one server to another server to another server in the organization. And basically what it did is it held their entire data hostage, and they were told that if they wanted their data back, they had to pay via Bitcoin of all things. And so we worked with them on that, and one big lesson that I think everybody should take away is, and it's such a very basic one, had this client of ours actually tested and ensured that they had solid backups, they would not have been forced to actually pay the ransom that they had to get that data back. We went back with them looking to try and help them restore, and unfortunately, the only good backup that they had was from like 2 months prior to this incident. Wow. And as you can imagine, a company doing hundreds of orders a day and thousands of productions in a month, there was no way that we could just go back 2 months. We had to have that data. So they ended up having to pay.
Wow. If nothing else, the example that you just gave should be something to tell people about security of their data and their systems. So, we're not proposing that you don't have data or have it, in the cloud or wherever it may be, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but be careful, right? Care is the best thing someone can be with the data that's coming in and out of their systems that can be hijacked like that. That is a crazy story. So kind of, we've been talking about data and different types of data and KPIs and all those fun things that are out there we've been chatting about. So, when someone's out there and they're looking, they're thinking, what do I do? Is it Excel? Is it whatever? What tools do you suggest, or do you see our clients using, or we're using internally that help with this?
Sure. The number one go-to tool for anybody that wants to deal with analyzing data seems to be Excel. They seem to rely heavily on Excel. And while that is a really great tool, I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but it's usually requiring a ton of manual manipulation of data in order to create the pivot tables, the beautiful charts and graphs that you want to analyze your data with. And we don't have that kind of time right now. A lot of organizations are stretched very thin. Their teams are very thin right now. And so to try and produce that data quickly is almost near impossible. And if you recall, when we first started this, what was the number one thing that CEOs were relying on, or were scared of, I should say? It was getting reliable data. Right. You're not going to be able to give your CEO reliable, fast data if you're dealing in Excel. So there are some really great tools that are more robust and more automated out there that people might want to take a look at. Sage Intacct has some great tools in it to allow you to analyze your data instantaneously. There is a tool called BI 360 that is wonderful for analyzing data. And then Microsoft has their Microsoft Power BI, which is another great tool to be able to slice and dice your data. So those are some of the more powerful ones out on the market that people should probably take a look at.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice, and you know, the different pieces that are out there, even tools. You know, I know we work with and represent a product around collections management. You know, you talked about receivables going up before major in a recession. You know, Anytime Collect, another tool that we work with, that is a very powerful tool that just enhances the ERP you might already have. And you talked about, you know, you mentioned Sage Intacct, and I know we work very closely with Sage. And what they do, and so just kind of your last thoughts, kind of talking about cloud. You know, is the cloud secure? Is that where this data should be? Is it a problem? Should people worry about it? I mean, I know we all used to, right? Once upon a time, we thought the cloud was just those things in the sky, but now it's a lot different. So, you know, what are your thoughts around that in terms of data?
I think that people should really take a look at the cloud. It's very secure, and not only is it probably more secure than what you'd be able to produce in your own on-premise solution or your own on-premise environment. Think about what we're going through right now in this pandemic. People are everywhere right now. How are you able to get to your data if it happens to be residing on a server in your office? Right. If you had a cloud-based solution, life would be a little bit easier to transition on immediately from everybody being in the office to, okay, you know what, we can't be together now. We've all got to be in our own homes, but we still need to work and business still needs to go on. Right. So the cloud is probably really something they should consider.
Yeah, and I think even if you're in a premise environment, hosting is a similar situation. So we're not just talking about SaaS-only products. You know, we do with all of our products can be hosted and offsite, and backups then become easier to take care of and not worry about, and other things that go on. That's great advice. And it's interesting, you know, you talk about you know, the cloud and data and people working from all over. And one of the things I know, and it's on the screen now, we have a webinar on Tuesday talking about how the pandemic is pushing manufacturers to embrace more technology and so on. And that's one of the things we'll talk about there, where even the production manager might not be in the plant, is remote, but still has all the tools that they need to manage and keep the production cycle flowing, or the warehouse or whatever that is. So you know, that was great. So kind of in summary, you know, Mary Jo, your thoughts are great. I know that you're knee deep in all of this stuff right now every day. You know, on the sales side, we're doing what we always do, but in the services side, I know that it's a challenge every day. And likewise, you have the data that you need to be able to function every day. And here we are, you know, conversing via, you know, the web. But in everybody that joined, hopefully the information we provided was helpful. I know there's a lot around data. We're always available to talk more and help you out in any way that we can. But the message is data is good, and data is important, and it'll help you get through this and drive your business. So we hope that you'll join us on Tuesday and look for more things coming from us as we keep trying to keep you up to date and learn more things as we all work through this thing. And stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Frank. Stay well.
Thanks, Mary Jo.